Hello everyone, and welcome back. It's almost that time of year again. Time to fire up the wood boiler, and we still have to go through and clean it from last year. Get all these ashes out, check everything out. And I've got a lot of questions on this boiler last year, and I said that when I did this video, I'd go over a couple of the things that people asked, because until you use it for a whole season and get to know its personality and how everything works, you really don't know. Right now though, I got a lot of ashes to clean out of here. That's what it looks like after a whole season of burning. That chimney was pretty much spotless. I mean, there was no creosote buildup on the sides or anything, so this thing must burn pretty clean. That's cleaning up in here. No reason to get down to shiny metal. I'm just going to be filling it up with wood and burning it again. One thing I do want to do this year, like, you know, you fill it with wood and then, you know, in the shoulder season you can do it once a day. In the wintertime it's good to do it 2 times a day. And you come out here though and you open it up and the wood that's in here hasn't totally burned yet. And you get some of those big chunks of wood that is actually turned into charcoal. So I would like to have a metal bucket around here, maybe a metal garbage can. And then when that happens, I can take some of that out and put it into the garbage can or the metal whatever. And then when it comes time to barbecue, because you guys know that I use the grill a lot, I can use that as lump charcoal. I've made it before up at the tent by putting wood chunks into an almost airtight type container so that you put it on the fire, you know, you get the fire going, it burns the wood, but there's not enough air in there for it to combust. So it just ends up turning into like charcoal. You have a little hole in the top where the gases and everything come out. It was a pretty neat experiment. But here I saw a lot of it last year, and it just eventually burns into ash, but I could pull that out, save some of it, and you know, it doesn't take much to save a bag of charcoal. And I think I'm going to try to do that this year. Everything back here in the boiler worked pretty good. Didn't have any real big issues once I learned how to use it. The only problem I had was, it happened 2 times last winter, was with this. This is what I use. It plugs into here and it runs, these are the 3 pumps. House pump, guest house pump, workshop pump. This is the light that I have on the side, and usually I plug that in down here. The only problem I had was when you're filling the firebox full of wood, it's just bound, it's going to happen. Some of that wood is going to bang against the back of the boiler. And when that happened, over time, it vibrated that plug-in loose. I was in the house and all of a sudden the heat comes on and the house sounds totally different when the furnace comes on. You don't realize it until it happens. And it's like, what is that? And it smells different because you are firing up the furnace that hasn't been burned in, say, a month or 6 weeks. There's going to be some dust that burns off of it. And it was like, what was going on? It's like, oh no, and I come out here, everything looks good on the boiler. I'm set at 180 for my, when the water temperature shuts down the fan. And then at 174, I have it set where it kicks on and turns on the fan. And we can talk about that in a little bit also. But all of that was working, but in the house, the furnace was on. So then I come out here and that's what it was. This came loose just a little bit, enough to shut off the pumps, and I think it was like this, because like the bottom pump, or is that how I had it? Yeah, whatever pump was still working, and the other 2 weren't. So you got to be careful with that too when it's cold. I mean, it would take a long time for that to freeze because the ground around those water pipes that are down like 18 to 24 inches, it stays warm around them. But still, I mean, if you didn't watch it and you were on vacation or something, you could get yourself into trouble. So I'm either gonna wire it, put a wire here over to here just to hold it in, or I'll get a different type of plug-in. I like this one because it doesn't use that much space and it's real convenient. I just need to make sure that it doesn't vibrate loose at all. And I'm actually gonna plug this in right now. It'll probably be 2-3 weeks before I fire the boiler up. But twice this summer I've come in here and plug this in and let it run for like a week or 2 weeks just to get everything moving and make sure everything's good. So I'll plug this in, come out here tonight, and I'll check the light on the pumps. There's a certain color that means it's working good, or if it's flashing, it's doing something. Every time they've worked good. I think it would be smart to get 1 or 2 of these just to have them here in case one went out, because you know, what do you do if it's a weekend and one goes out and you can't get another one? I think I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, and it should turn the fan on inside. So what happens with the boiler, you know, you start a small fire to get some coals and build it bigger, just like you would do any campfire, until you get it going on a wood stove. And the way this thing works, the reason it can work for such a long period of time, like, you know, without having to restart the fire, is there's a differential you can set on there. And the water temperature that's running through the pipes, when it's fully hot, we have it set at 180. And when it drops down, like when it's cold out, we have it set so the differential, when it gets down to 172, just like on the thermostat on your house, you know, if heat comes on, it shuts off, it drops a couple degrees and kicks back on. For the fire, you put it in there, when it gets up to 180, it shuts off the fan. Then the fire is just sitting here smoldering. That's, you know, it's all it's doing. It's not doing much at all. And then when it drops to 172, then it will kick the fan on again, and that fan is blowing air through the fire. You can adjust it too for a faster fan or slower fan, and you know, it's set quite low. And then that reignites the fire. The problem is in the shoulder season, which is like if we started it now, you know, when you're getting to 50 degrees during the day and it's getting down to, like last night got to 28 degrees, it takes a very long time for the 180 degree water to drop down to 172. And what happens is your fire goes out. So in the shoulder season, right now, and then in the spring when it's starting getting warmer, I changed that differential to like 3 or 4. I even did 2 for a little while last year when I was having trouble and couldn't keep it going, which didn't take very long to figure it out. Because then at 180 it kicks on, or it kicks off, and then it drops down to say 178, kicks back on. There's no time for that fire to go out. So that's kind of the personality that you have to learn, and you have to learn it with different kind of woods too. So it's not a huge learning curve, you know, because in the house, there's a little thing that sits on the water pipe that runs through, there's like a radiator that sits above your furnace air handler, kind of like an air conditioning unit, but hot water goes through that. And then when the furnace inside the house calls for heat, it just kicks the fan on the furnace, and it blows the air through that radiator and it heats up the house. Well, that is set so that if the water gets below 142 degrees or 140, it's not real accurate, it's a little dial, then your furnace will kick on, not the because the boiler doesn't have enough heat. That's why you can also go on a vacation and you could let the boiler go out, because the furnace will run on its own fuel and the water will still circulate, which will keep the water in the boiler from freezing. Because you don't put, some people, you can put antifreeze in these things, most people don't. And if we would have put antifreeze in this with last year's prices, it would have costed $6,000. You just fill it with water. You get your water tested every year to make sure that, I have to send this in actually this year. And they tell you if you have to add any more chemical to it or not. There is a chemical that keeps everything from corroding that they put in there. But, you know, it sounds kind of complicated, but it's really not. You know, this thing just, 180 is how hot the water gets, and then boom, it clicks off, you know, just like a furnace. And you have the backup kind of with your house because if something happens. So that's why now, last year, at the beginning of the year, I had a little over a quarter of a tank of fuel oil. And now, we've been using the furnace now for the last couple weeks when it's needed. And now it's just below a quarter of a tank. So I burnt just a little bit of fuel. And so I didn't put any fuel in last year. I called up today or tomorrow probably, or early next week, they're going to come and fill that tank up. That full tank would probably last me many years if we're only burning, you know, less than a quarter of a tank. So it'll probably last you 4 or 5 years. And And we could start this earlier, but no need when you just need the furnace to come on a couple times overnight. No reason to be burning all this wood and playing around with your differential trying to keep the fire going. Get in here out of the wind. Another question, of course, that I got is there a big money savings using it? And for us, it really, it would be for anybody. But, you know, there is the price of the unit. And for us, it was a big cost for the install because we had so many. I have 107 feet or 120 feet going to the house. I've got 100 and some feet going to the actual workshop, and then a little bit less than that going to the guest house. So there was a lot of cost in putting it in, which a person could have done themselves, but I'm glad I didn't because that looked like a lot of work. But as far as the wood goes, right now I spent last winter almost exactly the same amount on wood that I usually spent on fuel oil. I mean, it was almost a direct match to what I bought last year for wood versus what I would have put in the furnace for fuel oil. The difference is I not only heated the house and the hot water in the house, so we're not using the electricity because we have an electric water heater, and the water is hotter. Melissa likes that hot water better than like right now when it's on, you know, plugged into electric. It lasts longer. There's more hot water. And we heated the whole entire workshop building front and back, and we heated the guest house. So I spent the same amount of money on wood that I would have on fuel oil and heated 3 buildings versus just the house and the hot water. So there's no way for me directly to say I saved this much money and it's going to take this many years to pay this off because we don't have a fuel oil furnace or a propane furnace. Never had it in the workshop or in the guest house. We do have those furnaces in there now. I didn't hook up any fuel oil or get a tank brought out for propane or anything because we just run the boiler. So huge savings, just don't know how to calculate it. I also throw this jacket on this time of year if I'm out doing something dirty. This is my boiler jacket, that's why I don't throw it out. It's going to get full of soot. It smells like the smoker in the mudroom all winter because of this, but this is what I wear over whatever when I come off to do the boiler. If you buy one of these, you can see how all that is a ball on the bottom of it and it floats up and down with the water. Now it's a little bit below add. I will add some, but last year I filled it up to full. Don't do that. Water will expand when it gets warm, and then it was bubbling out the top. So I'll probably fill that up to the 1 mark above add, and we just lost that from evaporation. And then when it gets heated up, it'll go all the way up to full. I've been asked if I suggest people get one of these. That's up to you. You're married to it, you know, as far as winter goes. Like I said, you can run the house and it'll keep everything warm. So you can still go on vacation and stuff like that. But basically, if you bought one of these, you bought it to use it. But for us, we can go, now with Brandon living here, we can do more because there's somebody to do the chores. But otherwise, you know, you can fill up the chicken waterer and feeder. They're good for 7 days. You know, if we take the dogs with us, we're fine because you can get enough food and water for the cats and stuff for a few days. But, you know, so it works good for us. Or if you're living on a farm where you've got animals to tend to all the time, you know, you're married to your place anyway. But you don't have the freedom, but we're not extroverts. We're definitely introverts, you know, so it wasn't a big deal. Cutting the wood it's a lot of work. But the savings is worth it. I don't mind doing that kind of stuff. I mean, this year with my hernia, I got to be careful. So once that's fixed, it'll be awesome. And so, yeah, but otherwise, it's a lot of work, but I enjoy it. I think it's good. I did not like last year cutting up all the wood in the winter. That was the worst. Don't want to have to do that again. Not as much as I had to do last year. The way it's going right now, I've got a guy that's supposed to be bringing me out 12 cord of wood that's already cut into chunks, not split. And he won't talk to me for 2 or 3 weeks. Then he got a hold of me and said, hey, I think I can get on your pile next week. It's like, okay, awesome. That'd be great because otherwise I got to get another 12 cord of wood out here and start cutting on it because I'm going to need to cut about 6 or 8 of that cord up for this winter. Last winter we burned 20 cord of wood. And with the stuff that is in the woodshed right now, and all of this you see here is 12 cord. So 20 cord is a lot of wood, but you have to keep in mind that last year, like the guest house itself, I didn't have any of the floor system under here insulated at all. And I still don't have it skirted yet, so all that cold air from winter could just blow right underneath here and just go right up against the plywood floor. Also, I would start that furnace up before I had anything insulated. You know, just starting to insulate in here, and didn't have any poly or anything on the ceiling, so that was mainly just to heat the air up a little bit for me. But the furnace would constantly run, you know, it was never shut off. We still haven't blown the insulation up in the attic. I'm planning on doing that here in the next few weeks, but I got deer hunting coming up too and stuff, so. But I want to get that done because it will take hardly nothing to heat this, you know, 720 square feet. It won't take much at all. Versus last year, that furnace ran a lot. You know, by the end of winter, you know, it wasn't as much because I had the lid on and you know, and the whole thing was insulated, just not the floor. You'd be in here and your feet would be freezing, but the air in here was pretty warm. We'll just end up burning less wood because things are insulated better. You know, I mean, every time your furnace kicks on, that cold air is blowing across that radiator thing, like I said there. You know, this gets real hot, and the air from the air handler blows through it and blows it up your plenum or whatever it's called, which I am going to do here pretty quick, but I don't have it done yet. And then, you know, heats the whole entire building. Well, if that heat can just disperse, this is running a lot, and as soon as you're taking the heat away from the water, it's taking longer for the boiler to get up to the 180 to kick off, so you're burning more wood. Also here in the workshop, well, this part you can't see it, but the only thing it has, it's got this metal ceiling, and above that for insulation, it's 2 inches of styrofoam. In this back part of the workshop that we're remodeling, going to make it into Melissa's pottery studio, you can see, because part of this has a metal roof. And see, there's the styrofoam. That's all that there is. I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't know if I'll do it at the same time. I should. I'll have the machine here. I want to blow at least a foot or 12 or 16 inches of insulation on top of this foam, but I got to wait until I get this metal roof in, the metal ceiling in. Or over on this part, I might sheetrock it. I'm not sure. I think I'm going to sheetrock it for sure in her kiln room. But anyway, otherwise that weight will push down on this here, so I'd like to have something a little more rigid before I do that. But once that gets done, once again, right now there's heat loss that goes up there. You run it, you know, nice and warm in here, and you can watch water drip off that roof in the winter. So more insulation up here, less heat needed to heat this room and the back room, you know, equals you're burning less wood. For those of you that do not watch the channel all the time, you're just watching this because you're thinking about getting a wood boiler put in the workshop here, this part, all I have is this air handler right here. And all it does is just a radiator with a fan behind it. We actually had this put in. The company that installed, you know, did all the actual heating work and stuff, bought this from them. And back here in Melissa's studio part, we actually put in a whole entire furnace, because for her, this area, when she has clay in it, can't freeze. You know, up in the front, if I wanted to, I could shut that down. And so if I ever want to hook propane up to this, I can. But, you know, we didn't last year. We just ran it. This is that little thing I was telling you about that hooks on to the pipe. It can go on here too. A little more accurate when it's on the metal part there. And that's what tells the furnace, you know, if we were running this, like the one in the house, that you can see it set just above 140. That when the water temperature from the boiler gets down to that temperature, then it would click this on if it was hooked up like it is in the house, and then the regular furnace just kicks on and heats your house like usual. Talk about a boring video. I guess it's not boring if you're interested in getting a wood boiler. I sure like ours. Well, I'm gonna run in and have lunch, see if there's anything else I can think of that I should cover on this, make this even longer. And then we'll end it. I was going to be back out by the boiler, but it's gotten kind of nasty this afternoon, real windy and cloudy at Melissa's work, which is a half-hour away. It's been raining there, but not here. I thought I would just, there was a couple other questions that I get, so I thought I would put this in here. You know, this is like the boiler. This is the front. This is the firebox. This is the ash box. This up here, I don't know what they call it. Is that a baffle? We'll call it that. Anyway, you build your fire here, of course. And then one of the questions I get is, how often do I have to clean the ash container? And they say to check it, you know, every couple days. But I find in reality, once a week. I check it 2 times a week. Sometimes I'll have to dump it, like when we're really burning hard in the wintertime. But it won't be full like that halfway through the week. But there are times that at the end of the week, it might be really full, and sometimes it'll be just like, you know, 3/4 of the way full. Today it was full just because we're digging everything out and the grade is moving and everything. But so yeah, twice a week is good, but in reality, once a week. A firebox, you know, you can fill it. We do it 2 times a day, but when it's in the shoulder seasons, you can easily get by with 1 time a day. And then how it works is, you know, your fire goes in here and burns up, and then here's our smoke comes up here, but then it's got this baffle thing. So the smoke has to come here, goes around, and then goes up the pipe. And I suppose you get more heat out of that. You know, by the time it goes up here, it's getting pretty cool. And so when you're going to put wood in it, you pull this lever out. You've seen me do that. And there's a little thingy here, and that pulls it back so that it's just a straight shot here. So then, you know, it's venting faster going up, so you're not getting so much smoke out the door. And a couple of times, 2 or 3 times last year, I forgot to shut this, and it still works the same, but you're losing a lot of heat because it's just going straight up. There's nothing to slow it and come around here and go up. And this here, you have to scrape this out because this gets full of really fine, I suppose it's ashes, and that's why you saw me scrape it today. And this here I do, again, once a week is good. You could get by a little longer, but it's not like it's going to fill up, but you know, everything goes smoother when it's, you know, clean versus going over mounds of, you know, ashes and stuff like that. And I'm not really sure, like on this back part, you know, all the water jacket and stuff is up here. There is some pipes that are in here too. Actually, that's one of the things I dislike about it, is that when you're throwing wood in here, you know, I'm just chunking that in when it's cold. And if you're getting a pile of wood in here and you chunk that wood in, you'll hit these. And so you have to watch it. You get used to it. And I don't know what these do. They're not running water through them, so it must just be something to do with making everything burn more efficiently. And then we've got our blower, which is actually up here, and then it goes down, and that comes in underneath the grates. And then, yeah, when it sets and then the fan kicks on and it blows that air and it really gets that fire going, just like if you're blowing on a campfire. And then when it gets up to 180, which is what we have it set at, then it shuts this off. The air stops and it just smolders away. One thing I did do last season is when you get this, you know, the smokestack just comes out maybe 10 inches. So we added one more piece on here because the smoke comes out, but then out in that field, it tends to kind of lay at that level when the air is real heavy. By going up more, it would lay a little higher. Didn't want it to get over to the neighbor's place, even though they're so far over there, I don't think they're affected at all. And then you start to get a little bit more air movement up here. I would put one more section on here, but the only thing I worry about is when we get like a 60-mile-an-hour winds in the wintertime, that's a lot of pushing on there. So as it is, I bought one of these collars that goes on here that went around the actual seam where they come together, and then I went and put screws in there just to help hold that when it gets so windy. Another thing also, last year that wood that I burned, a lot of it was pretty green. You can burn anything. If you can get it in the door of this thing, soaking wet, green, this big around, it doesn't matter. If you can get it in the door, get that door shut, it'll burn it down to absolutely nothing. There was some of that oak I put in there last year that was huge, and it takes a long time, but it burns it right down. But this year, the wood that we're using is much more seasoned. It would be nice to have wood that was seasoned 2 years, and it just will take a while to get that much and get it cut up, and you know, so you're not, this year now that stuff I bought was seasoned for a whole year, or like a whole season when I got it last year. Now it's sat this whole season. So it's 2 years seasoned, but it's not 2 years seasoned already cut up. So there's still some moisture, but it's going to be much drier than what we burnt last year, which will use less wood, because when you put wet wood in there, you know, water doesn't burn. So you are using BTUs to burn whatever, the steam and water out of that wood before it can burn for you and give you BTUs. So you're wasting some of your fuel, making your fuel efficient, if that makes sense. So the best thing to do would be to have some really seasoned wood, but whatever you can get, you can put in there and it'll burn. Okay everyone, well thanks a lot for watching. I think I'm going to end this one right now, and then if I get a bunch of questions in the comments, when I fire this up in a few weeks, I'll do a follow-up and answer those questions. Right now you can get the Crown Royal 7400 MP for a little under $14,000. So the savings isn't bad right there. You just have to watch out on that install, because you can easily double that depending on what you're doing. I will see you guys on the next video.